What would your life look like if you weren't worried about money? What would your parents' lives have looked like if they didn't worry about money? And what about your grandparents and your great-grandparents? All right, everyone, I am back, and today I'm sharing an interview with you with a dear friend. Her name is Leisa Peterson. And before I introduce you to Leisa, I want to talk about money. Money consciousness, wealth consciousness. A few weeks back, I did a wealth consciousness kind of mini course challenging you to kind of think differently about money. And I'm not a money coach, I'm not a money expert, but I am a human being who has definitely had fears and worry about money in the past. And I've shared a lot about my own personal stories, with my money blocks and pushing through them. And I think as women, we kind of carry extra money baggage. But I want to ask you, do you realize that your stress about money comes from a thought and an action and a strategy? And when you begin to understand the consciousness of our thoughts and our feelings, we then can create new opportunities for ourselves in the world. You have to think about possibility. And money is just one of those areas. I enjoy a good woo-woo or a law of attraction book, but I do not believe that we can just cross our fingers and think positive thoughts and magic happens. And that is what I love about Leisa Peterson. She's a real down-to-earth healer. And she has had some traumatic events happen in her life, but the way that she has been able to process that and work through it has been really inspiring to watch. So Leisa's on a mission to help 1 million people elevate their financial consciousness. She's a money coach, a business consultant, and a spiritual leader. She's the host of the Mindful Millionaire podcast, as well as virtual workshops and deep dive retreats. Her masterful blend of sound financial strategy and mindfulness training helps people break free of patterns of lack, scarcity, money fears, and allowing them to finally lead the rewarding, fulfilling, abundant lives they most desire. So she has her new book, Mindful Millionaire. We're talking about it today on the podcast. So dive in, let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoy. All right, welcome Leisa to the show. I'm excited to have you.
Hello, Heather.
It's been a while since we connected, and you now have a new book, baby. I see it behind you over there, The Mindful Millionaire.
Yeah, it's such a cool experience.
Every time I talk to a coach who wrote a book, they're like, this is so different. This is so different putting a book out there into the world, and vice versa. When authors are trying to run online programs, like, this is so different. So I would just love to know, we'll talk about the book, but I want to know about the process a little bit for you of birthing this thing that was inside of you and then putting into tangible form.
So when you spend 5 years on something and you are relentless with it, that it's really captured your soul and your attention. And I feel like that's what happened. What's so funny too is the book I thought I was going to write and the book that ended up coming into reality is different. And it was really, I feel like I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by so many amazing people, both my clients and my agent and my editor and all these folks, the guy who wrote the foreword, like everybody had a piece that caused the book to become better than it would have been had I just tried to keep it in tight and be like, this is my book. And I really wanted to put that out there and get feedback. And because of that, I think the book is at a completely different level than I ever actually thought I was capable of creating. And that's pretty exciting, because I'm like, I feel like it's my book, but I don't really feel like I'm the one it all came from. Like, I feel like it came through me and wanted to come even in these times, which, is just uncanny.
It's interesting that you say that, because going down this path myself, when like everyone gets their blocks, right? Or their sticking points. And one of my first ones was, I don't want to write this. Like it's there, but it needs to come out. And the way that it needs to come out, I really had to trust myself. And then now that it has come out, like we just finished manuscript, but we're nowhere near like print or anything. And you could see how it is art. It like the prison that we put ourselves in of like, it's got to be like this. It's got to be like this. And when you were just speaking now, what I heard was co-creation, like the importance of co-creation and collaboration, and how when we bring together our wisdom, it just becomes so much better beyond what we ever thought possible.
Most definitely. And I'm probably more proud of it because of that than, again, I think if I had just said, oh, I've got all of it figured out, and I'm going to put that into a book. Instead, it was like the material wanted to be living and breathing through the reader. And I don't even think I fully understood the importance of that, but the early reviews we're getting are like women saying, I'm 53 years old and I'm 53 too. So, I'm 53. The fact that the reader could even make a dent in the way I think was a big, big aha. But then they said, from the minute I started reading, I felt like she was speaking just to me and that she was holding my hand through this process. And the voices she was sharing are the same voices I've had in my head. And that is not an easy book to write. And I think that's why it took me so long to write it, to be able to have someone have their experience, not my experience, which really wasn't my goal. It was about, can someone come into it, have it meet them where they are, and then take them on a journey.
That's the beauty of it, right? Because it is about the reader. They're purchasing your book, they're reading your book because they want that transformation or that wisdom or that knowledge. So what is the Mindful Millionaire? And when, I know you said it's been inside of you for a long time, but what does it kind of encompass and what makes it different from other money books that are on the shelves?
So what I set out to do was teach people, especially those that fell into one of two camps. One is more like myself, the other is more like my parents. And so my parents weren't so great with money. They really struggled a lot with it. I grew up in a home where there was a lot of stress about money. I was really oriented to wanting to help them. They're no longer alive, but I felt that and I saw that in the people that showed up to my work. So there's one camp of those folks. And what was most important there is that you don't feel judged as a reader, which a lot of finance books really, like I just picked up one the other day and I know the gal, and the first 5 pages, she said, if you haven't figured this out yet, it's your fault. You're making excuses. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's the antithesis of what I wanted to do in my book. I wanted people to know no matter where you come from, you are okay in my world and you're going to feel okay here. And in fact, you're going to accept yourself more than you ever have before. Nothing is going to criticize you. So that was a big deal because I knew my parents, they wouldn't have appreciated that either, right? And then on the other side were people like myself where for whatever reason, we made money really important in our journey. And for me, deciding I want to have a lot of it. And at some point reaching a moment in time where I realized I was sacrificing the rest of my life in pursuit of money. And that is not the point of it either. And so I wanted to write to both of those folks. And from the reviews and what I'm hearing, both people are drawn to it. Because at the end of the day, and this is tying into your first question, it is a journey to finding your true self, but you're using money to do that. So that's why you can have two audiences find out that they're actually both heading in the same direction.
So what is the structure of the book? Like, what is it practical? Is it like it's called Mindful? I'm so curious. I haven't gotten my copy yet. Dang Canada.
I just got an email this morning saying Canada is starting to get the books. So the good news. So my journey has been teaching mindfulness and meditation for nearly 20 years. So I had that aspect of my own experience. And what was so important about that is if we do not have control over our minds, we're not going to have control over our destiny. And so there is a heavy element of like, this is what mindfulness has done for me. And here's some ways you can incorporate it into your life. Very easy, very simple, 5 minutes a day kind of stuff. What it's structured in is 3 parts. The first part is a little bit about my journey, a lot about the science behind scarcity and tunneling and patterns of biology, of neuroscience. Like I really wanted to give the documentation of like what's happening here in our relationship with money, what's going on in the societies that we live in that is negatively impacting our relationship with money. And then, chronicling along the way little snippets of stories of my clients and my own experiences of kind of meeting our match with money and breaking through it. But the second part is really like the meat of the book, where I take people through this 8-step process called I Prosper. It's similar to The Artist's Way. All the questions, everything I teach is in this book. I didn't hold anything back. People have paid me tens of thousands of dollars to get access to what I'm teaching. And that was a real big leap that I decided to take. Just put it all out there, see if people could use it on their own. And then the third part is about what does life look like on the other side? What are the differences that are happening in my life? And this is basically from questions that came in from my clients, like, why have these people ghosted me? Like, why do I not want to have these people in my life anymore? Like all these things that are going to happen as a result of the boundaries and the permission that you're giving yourself to build more wealth in this mindful way. What's going to happen? Some people aren't going to like it. Some people are going to love it. New people are going to come into your life. And so it's kind of like rules for the road. And then just the conclusion of what you've found in your journey.
So let's talk about women and wealth, because this is very interesting to me. A lot of the women that I attract, definitely like in Mastery and Mastery 2.0 business, I'll have the women who want a different way of life, right? A different way of being, thinking outside of the box. Maybe it's leaving their job or shifting it or whatever that is. And I talk a lot about emotional intelligence. And I started this with parenting, but I see how the core of how we think and show up in our lives, just it goes into all areas of our life. But then you get to money. And even if she's making a lot of money, you're like, do you want to make more? And she's like, well, I don't need more. Or it's so interesting. And I know for women, we have so much generational stuff that we're bringing with us. But yeah, I've witnessed what happens when you begin to make more and how people start treating you differently and the boundaries that need to be in place and the guilt sometimes that comes up of having more. So just curious your opinion on that.
I, many years ago, heard the tall poppy syndrome thing that happens, I guess, in Australia, where people start to kind of stand up and have more money or have more fame or whatever it is. And there's this like cutting their heads off kind of thing, this thing that happens that nobody really knows exactly. Maybe it's like gaslighting. I mean, all different ways that we feel like it's not really good for us to be doing what we're doing. And I experienced it in my own life. We would build homes that were pretty over the top and incredible. And I remember moving into one of them and folks came over and they didn't come over again. And I felt like there was this competition or comparison or something that's going on. And so that's real. But what I think is probably more interesting is how do we help ourselves when we see that kind of stuff coming up? And how do we stay grounded and true in our own principles? And I think that women have to actually look deeper into their why than maybe a guy does, because of these things that we're coming up against. Because in all fairness, when you reach a net worth of a couple $1,000,000, you really aren't motivated as a woman by lots and lots of money. It just, you like got everything you want. Like, and I know this, I've lived this for a few years now. It's like, money is not my motivator. I make decisions from a very different place. So what do? You kind of look out. And for me, it's like, well, what gets me really, really excited might not be money and stuff, and even experiences. Kind of been there, done that. It's like, it's impact. It's like, how many lives can I bring this work to? Because I know how much it helped me. I know how much it touched other people's lives. So let's go have a bigger business, or let's go make more money because I'm able to touch more lives. I'm able to spend more on marketing. I'm able to, maybe talk to big influencers in the world, because as your platform grows, you get invited to bigger and bigger conversations, or get to sit at different tables where you may have never been able to sit had you not been seen as a thought leader or an influencer of some sort. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious what you think about that, because I'm sure there's lots of ways.
Yeah, I feel like, they say new level, new devil, but it doesn't have to be a devil. I feel like it's so interesting because there is no, like, you always have those little glass ceilings and those bumps, but becoming your best self or becoming who you were born to be is infinite and limitless in my mind. And it's the journey of evolution. But you begin to, once you get out of your own way and start the momentum, you're like, possibility, possibility, possibility. And you just keep going and going and going. And for me, like, I could see there's been a big shift in the last few years. But boundaries are beautiful. And there were moments when I felt alone or isolated, but then it's almost like you said, the platform building, and you're like, okay, I can give back. Like, you have to dig deeper into your why. And I'm very curious. I'd love to know, like, at the beginning stages of your journey, what your big why was, because sometimes people are motivated, quote unquote, motivated, and sometimes they're not. And to me, money is just an added resource for impact. But I didn't always believe that when I was living in a state of survival mode and needed to get the bills paid. But now it's a different motivator for me. And there was a time in my life where I needed to stop being like, okay, I need more money, because that wasn't motivating me anymore. I'm like, oh, impact. So I'm very impact driven now. It's like, I want to make more so that this can go here, this can do this, and then also just getting the message out. But yeah, I'm just curious about, like, how your evolution and mindset of money has evolved over your years.
So when I made the decision in the mid-90s to become a millionaire, it was pure and simple, I think, curiosity. I had an MBA in finance. I was like coming from nothing, and I thought, well, why not me? Like, it was really from that place. And I think it was kind of an intellectual exercise at the time. It was like, well, it's a game. And I talk about this in the book. So I just need to master the game. And there was definitely a part of me that thought at that time, if I have it, if I make it, then I'll be like in that club, in that like wealthy club or something, where I hadn't been growing up, nor had my husband. But then when we started, 10 years later, we sort of hit that millionaire mark. Then what happened is we went into a whole bunch of scarcity stuff because we weren't prepared for it. We had no one to model from. We were really almost losing it again and again with like decisions and choices. And it was like survival mode, because this would have been 2007, 2008, and we were in real estate, and it was like just massive amounts of scarcity. So it was like, I could see how people self-sabotage completely unconscious, and they lose it, or they can't hold on to it, or they make a lot, but they don't keep it, which is super important, right, in this process. So then that spent another 5, 6, 7 years. And it wasn't until I actually left my career as a financial advisor to start this company. And it was a whole new why. And I think that at that time, I knew we had done it. I knew we were going to be okay financially, and we weren't over this stuff with losing it. But I didn't realize what I was ready to do was actually step into my voice, step into creativity in a way that I had never tapped into. And that's why I think I started writing the book, and I started teaching frameworks and models and processes. I didn't know if I could actually do it. I thought I was too shy to actually get my word out there. I had a lot of head garbage, regardless of how much money I had, of not feeling comfortable in the spotlight, not taking up so much space in the world, like all of those things that were what I had to do and learn about to overcome as part of being a business owner.
That's awesome. So what is the impact for you now? What are you noticing, like with the people that you're working with? What do they go from? Like, what is that transition? And what do you think that little nugget is that they really need to like get in order to become that mindful millionaire?
I think early on, it was very oriented to wanting more money, more success. But I'm noticing a softening of that in the people showing up are very sophisticated in, their therapists, their coaches that have already built a business. And now they're in that stage of like, maybe it's thought leadership. It's like refining their ideas and liking more money, liking this idea of not struggling, liking the idea of fully funding a retirement and being able to pay for their healthcare in the United States in retirement. Like these sorts of things are coming up. Part of it's because I'm educating people about these things. In the beginning, I couldn't always tell them where we were headed. But as I become more discerning of like, where do you want to go? People are showing up who are like, yeah, I want that. I want to do what I love. I never want my work to feel like work. I want it to be so passion filled and meaningful that I would do it till the last day of, my life. But at the same time, I'm sick of throwing myself under the bus. And so what they're learning is how to stop putting everyone else before their needs, putting themselves first, and realizing that there's actually no such thing as first or second. But when we're putting ourselves second, we believe other people are ahead of us, bigger than us, more important than us. And that's when we actually don't end up building wealth. That's when we actually don't end up putting the dreams that we've got on the table, out there into the world. We just sort of hold them tight and they remain, in the shadows.
Why do people have such a difficulty with that? Like, oh, I've mastered putting everybody else before myself. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Knowing logically, it's like you're not putting any energy or intention towards this. That's why it's not there. But you've put so much energy and attention towards serving everybody else. That's why that's working for you. But you're feeling dead inside. Or you're in debt, or you're not where you are financially.
I have seen it so much that and it's for men and women, maybe more women than men, but I work with both. I have to think that this goes back generations, thousands of years of this idea that we are a cog in the machine, that we are merely a producer and yet not a thriver or an optimizer. And I think that we have seen in the past 50 years this change, especially from the 60s, of like, what does it mean just to be always be in service to everyone else versus your service is your optimization. They're connected to each other and that is possible. So I just don't think we even thought it was possible. And some people did. The Tony Robbins of the world. We've been researching and trying to live this in our own lives, but the majority, the books that you read, the schooling that you get, the work environment, the corporate world, it's all about serving to, carrot and stick and a reward system that's just kind of messed up.
Yeah. What have you noticed with the pandemic?
Yeah. So I teach about the chakras, and I'm noticing that people are very aware of this root chakra stuff, which is survival. Am I going to be safe? It's getting activated to the nth degree. And it's concerning to people because people are like, I've done all this work, the pandemic happens, and now I'm like, oh, is it going to be okay? Can I protect my children? Can I protect myself? Can I, is my husband going to stay alive? I mean, like whatever, but fear is here. And while fear is important because I think it keeps us safe, it makes us, be cautious about important things. I think we're all trying to find that common or that in-between space where we can still navigate life, we can still go about our business, and we can still set goals for ourselves and not succumb to the fear. But in all fairness, I think it's on a day-by-day basis. And I think that COVID is showing us the importance of being incredibly resilient in the face of uncertainty, because this uncertainty is not going away anytime soon. And those who have prepared for many years, I think, are more receptive to just being in the messy middle and not having to have certainty. So conspiracy theories are created because we want certainty, and they give us some idea of certainty, right? So like people are trying so hard to grab onto something when in reality, it's not a time to be grabbing onto a lot of expectation.
Yeah. It's been interesting for me to reflect back on, I think back 6 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer and how that was my like COVID and how it just shook me up like a snow globe, and all the work that I did to get to where I am today. And then that happened and I was like, I'm good. Like in some areas, I'm good. And yeah, we all have our moments and, you need to pivot and course correct and things fall away. But I'm like, we do not need to live in survival mode. Financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that is not the point. You actually don't even come into the world in survival mode. Like you're like, I got everything that I need. And then along the way, we grab onto those beliefs and stories and become restrictive. And then that becomes a cultural conversation. And with the pandemic and then the rise of awareness of the social injustice, that this is not new, it's just coming to the surface, people going, oh my gosh, and they either shrink or expand. And for me, I'm like, this is not a time to shrink. This is not a time to play small and to go into your cave, even as a white person. This is a time to expand and say, how can I be of service? But first you have to be of service to yourself, because you won't be out there in the world very long if you're not filling your cup up, like all the cliche things that they say, and financially as well.
Most definitely. And many of the greatest fortunes of all time have been made in downturns. And so we haven't really started the downturn yet. We're watching businesses close, but we don't know the impact of what it's going to look like. And I mean, with every kind of destruction over the history of man, there has been a rebuilding, a reconstruction. And I think that's where paying close attention to yourself, to your mind, to the positivity that you're able to apply, you're going to be so much better equipped to come up with just incredible ideas of how you can help people with the skills and the talents and the wisdom that you've developed. And I think it creates a really exciting time.
Mm-hmm. So what is a mindful millionaire to you in moments like this, when someone is watching, they've built all this wealth, they have that mindset, but then they feel like the rug has been pulled out from them and the scarcity is kicking in? Because if you have an abundant mindset, it's not like it's a muscle, right? Like you have to constantly focus on that. And we can have moments of contrast. So what do you say to that? Like, is there different types of scarcity? Like you're always living in scarcity versus like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, I'm, feeling that uncertainty. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a couple of questions in there. So the mindful millionaire is someone who's highly conscious of how you're earning, saving, spending, and investing your money. And whatever, I don't tell you what that looks like, you decide, but the more conscious you are about that. And so what you could imagine, just like you said, like, are there different times? Well, someone might be in scarcity mode when it comes to their spending and in abundance mode when it comes to their investing. But the idea is let's go ahead and be in abundance mode in all those areas. However, there's something called the paradox of thrift, and this is really fascinating. When we talk about spending. So right now, one of the problems that we're dealing with in the economies is that people have stopped spending. So if everybody does that, we actually hurt one another in a pretty negative way because spending's not happening. So there's nothing coming in when everybody stops spending. It's just basic science. Now, if we know that there's this kind of balance, the paradox of thrift, where we're saying, I understand the importance of having an emergency fund and making sure that I've got money available because maybe I didn't save as much money as I would have liked to, and here we are. And I also understand that I'm a contributor to the economy and my spending actually keeps things going. There's this immediate collective understanding that we are not separate. We are actually all working on this together. And we need everyone to realize that it isn't this rugged individualism, but yet this balance that we're trying to find between taking good care of ourselves in the moment and also taking good care of the economy. And again, I always say my stuff is in the messy middle because it's not going to be black or white. It's going to be somewhere in between. And your consciousness is going to help you say, well, this is the best decision today. And this is the best decision tomorrow, but not just God's going to take care of me. The money's going to fall from the sky. I'm going to manifest it. Got to be really careful about that kind of way of thinking in these times, because that's not what we've been learning about money.
Well, I think we need to be mindful of that anytime, but especially when it's, people are like, oh, I'll just figure it out. I'll just figure it out. And it's like, yeah, but if that's always I don't know. I just find in the wellness space, people are just like, just manifest it. And it's like, you can manifest it, but there is this balance between you do need a little bit of like spreadsheet and data and then the energetics aspect of it. Like you do need both. It can't just be one or the other.
Totally. I call it letting things happen and knowing when that's appropriate, and then making things happen and knowing when that's appropriate, and that we can do both. We don't have to live in one world or the other.
I think that's a really important skill to learn, though. And like you're talking about this messy middle, and it's reminding me of almost every single conversation I've had this week or the last 3 months, which has been like, you have to let go of this perfectionism. You have to release it. You feel it and you take the next step in front of it. And you are figuring out, that self-trust and intuitiveness. I'm just laughing because any perfectionism that I had left has gone. It has left the building.
That's
it has
awesome.
left. It has left.
Funny story. My husband has joined my company and he would really like to have things be perfect. And he was spending all this time researching everything that I've created over the past 6 years. And he was like, I don't know how to break this to you, but you got some messy stuff in there and it doesn't convey what you wanted to convey. And I was like, honey, if I had waited for it to be perfect, there would be nothing. Nothing would have hit the standard of like my old world working in a big bank and having everything be perfect. I'm like, yeah, I let that go. And so now he's already 2 weeks in, he's like learning, oh, this isn't okay. And he's like trying to learn how to do it.
I had a team member like that when she came in and I needed like that strategic planner. And so she came in and I was like, oh yeah, we get uncomfortable really quick. We talk about things here rather quickly. It's messy. I move. If my intuition is telling me to like pivot, we pivot. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. And I'm like, you gotta be flexible. Yeah. And you have to create shit to find the little Easter eggs inside. I don't know why I said Easter eggs, but
I mean, how many times have you had it where you're like, yep, I'm putting it out there. I know it's not, it's like, it feels like it's not polished and perfect. And then those are the things that have the biggest impact in people's lives. And you just laugh because you're like, I almost didn't hit the send button or post this.
Why is that?
Vulnerability. People like to see us in times where we're not polished, where we don't have it all figured out, where we're working through the problem, right? I mean, I like that. You probably like it. It's very human.
Yeah. But why do we feel like there has to be one right way? And we're searching for that too.
Programmed professionalism, this idea that you're in business, maybe you've got to have it be a certain way. I don't know. It's all being thrown out the window, isn't it?
Oh, especially now. That's what I kind of like. I'm like, yeah, make shit happen in your life. I'm like, there is no certainty. That job that you've been hanging on to, those benefits, now they're all being taken away from you and you don't have anything in the bank beyond that, like losing homes. And I'm like, why are we living paycheck to paycheck?
Well, it's so funny. I mean, this is kind of related, but today Marie Forleo sends an email out and I just clicked on it and she had a video, right? Because she's just like the TV shows, they're using Zoom. So she's sitting in her box and the other person that she's interviewing is in her box. And this is how I can interpret it. When you looked at her videos before all of this, it was like absolute perfection.
Yeah.
Everything in its place, every hair, every bit of makeup, the dress, perfection. And it's like, I don't think she could have actually gotten any more perfect. And yet here she is in this video, she looked normal. It wasn't like that. And I do feel like that's just a metaphor for like, are you guys kidding me? You know how many hours it takes to look like that as a woman when every hair's got to be perfectly, it's like, I've never been that person. I look at it and I'm like, I don't know how they do it, but like, how fun to just have it be, here I am world. And I'm okay with what I look like and my house, and my son might barge in any minute. And, this is real life.
Mm-hmm. And just realizing that we are enough as we are today, right? We are enough as we are. And what is within you, you can create from, and we don't need to put on this facade of who we're not. And I want to ask you kind of a question about that. So I think people put themselves in a box of, okay, I have this career and I am capped here, so I cannot make any more money, which is not true. There's other ways we can make money as well. And you definitely have to be interested, right? It's not just going to fall from the sky. You don't just pray about it or meditate and be like, help me. You have to like read the books and implement what's in the books and hire mentors and keep following along. But what do you say to those people that maybe have chosen the quote unquote mainstream path and are making a minimum wage job, doing something that they absolutely love, or they're a teacher or something, and that career in itself does not make a lot of money, but they're like, oh, I could never imagine a day without this career. Can they become a millionaire? I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think it depends on how much time you have and how much you save. But I mean, I meet people who are not making all that much money who have already achieved that in a very short amount of time, merely by, cutting expenses and looking at their situation and saying, well, this is how I get there. I mean, as long as you can come up with a plan, with a reasonable number of scenarios, like, well, what if this happens or that happens? And you troubleshoot that, like, once you've got it on paper, and this is a really cool exercise, like anybody can do it. You can go to, these compound interest, just super basic calculators on the internet. And you literally say, I want $1 million I'm going to use 7%, because I don't think these 12% numbers that David Bach uses is really a good idea. So 7% is still a little high of what I'm going to see compounded growth over time. How much money do I need to save for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it looks like, to get to $1 million, or maybe it's 500,000. But at the minimum, go do it so that you see what you're working with, because you might be surprised that it's actually totally possible. And maybe you're like, well, I feel like it's too late for me, but I've got a child and she's 20. Go work with her to show her what she needs to save for the next 40 years to be a millionaire. Do something, help someone, because you will be motivated to do things differently when you realize what's actually possible versus just thinking that it's not possible.
Have you seen somebody in the work that you do who has come from a scarcity mindset and has created that abundance? Because it is an emotional mental state, right? It is that you could be wherever you are, and it is about how you're thinking, how you're feeling. Yes, the actions that you take, but also the energy that you're putting out there into the world. So is there a specific example that you could give about that?
Yeah, there are several examples in the book. One of the first ones is a gal who came to me a few years ago. At that time, I think she had about $150,000 in debt, and she was broken up with her husband, and she had a coaching business and a PhD, and she wasn't making very much money, and she was struggling because everything that she made went to try and pay just the minimum on the debt, for example. And so the breakthrough that she had was, just like every single breakthrough, it's like there's a spot where we're throwing ourselves under the bus, where we've left our own self-compassion out of the equation, right? It's different. That's kind of what I go through in the book, is there's 7 different kind of scenarios. But in her case, did the breakthrough work, and then kind of disappeared for a few years and popped back in when she was like, hey, this work is so profound, because the big turning point for her was, I realized that I really wasn't taking full responsibility for my life and my business.
Ooh, and I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And that was the turning point. The work set her up to have that realization. And lo and behold, she and her husband get back together. He got an inheritance. Some other money came in. Next thing you know, all the debt is being paid off. Next thing you know, she's making $40,000 in a week. Just crazy numbers. And she wrote to me, not because I was asking her for it. She literally popped back in. And this is what happens with this sort of work. I won't see people. And then they pop back in and they're like, I want to tell you what's going on in my life. And I was like, can I use that in the book? Because that's amazing. And she's like, I know. She's like, I'm never going to ever have to worry about money for as long as I live, because I see what's possible for me. I see what I can go do in my business. I'm not in my way anymore. And, it was that responsibility piece. And it's so funny too, because this is the thing that I think people get confused on. When I met her, she was so driven. She looked so driven. Now I'm like, are you even working? Because she is so relaxed. There is none of that striving energy. There is none of that get ahead. She is so freaking relaxed in her own person. That's when you know things have changed. Not because you become more aggressive or more out there, boom, boom, boom. It's because you're just so happy no matter what happens, that starts to create this whole other thing in your life.
Because you've let go of the belief that you're not worthy, or you have to work really, really hard to make money. Mm-hmm. And this ambition-driven woman, again, that is being praised by society, you have to be an action taker. Yes, that is a given. At some point, you will begin to realize that everything that is happening to you is happening for you. And when you take ownership and responsibility of how can you, right, turn that ship around, and then it just becomes a lifestyle. It's a mindset. But I remember when I started my business and people are like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I'm driven by fear. I never want my children to feel the way that I did as a child. And I do not want to become a teen mom statistic. And now I can definitely see some of, we all have things we still need to work on. But now I'm like, this is just fun. This is fun and exciting. I'm like, what's next? Now it's a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like every day is a gift, because you don't know what's going to come, but you have so much trust in yourself and your own capacity to navigate whatever comes at you, even if it means you lose. I mean, one of the big things, and this is just like, I practiced Buddhism for many years, but meditating on death. I mean, I'm going to be really crystal clear with everyone listening. This is not about how much money you have. It's about the idea that no matter what happens, if it all disappears tomorrow, you know that you could recreate it. That if you die, there's something beyond this experience that we're having here right now. That's the kind of trust that we're all moving towards one way or another. Sometimes we have to get the money. In my case, I needed to get the money and realize that it didn't answer all my problems. In fact, I had a whole series of new problems I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. That until I dealt with this understanding of freedom and trust in myself that I could do it again, I was still hostage rather than free.
I love that. I was going to ask you on a personal level, if you want to share anything publicly, what writing this book and putting this book out into the world, if that brought up anything else for you to work on.
Oh, so much. I'm laughing because a year ago, I thought the book was going to come out in like January, February. And then I got the news that it was like June. And every step of the way, I've realized that I was not yet ready for the book to come out because I still had some work to do. Even like 3 weeks before, I was at a meeting with a group of women, and I was talking about something that wasn't like, it was a very spiritual group, and there's a lot of weird stuff happening in Sedona, Arizona, and other places where complete bypassing to the realities of COVID, where it's like, it's not happening, it's fake. And I was like, you guys, it's not fake. Like, I've had a lot of friends who passed away, and I was ostracized in the group for saying it. And it felt like bullying. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally left the thing and all night long up just going, what is going on here? Like, I am collapsing. And sure enough, I realized that I had some work to do before the book came out, because when you put something like this out, that you're like, your secrets, your vulnerability, your whole entire life, kind of put out there, that I was still holding on to something that I didn't fit in. And I needed to let that go at the deepest level of my being. And so this event provoked it, triggered me, spend all night, have this huge wake-up call. It also fit into what was going on with the race and all these things that are just kind of coming up and need to be dealt with, and my own story. And so afterwards, it's so funny because had it not happened, I think I would have been still scared of like, what's going to happen when this book comes out there and people don't agree. And now I am just in such a beautiful place of peace because I realize everyone feels like they don't fit in at some level. Like, I am not alone in that experience. We all have been there and felt it. And my realization was, of course I fit in. Like, where would I fit in? Like Mars? I mean, like, of course I fit in. It's impossible not to fit in. Yeah. And so that was a huge, huge, huge realization.
And you had to feel it all.
Mm-hmm.
You had to feel it and go through it. I also feel like people try to do this, I don't know what you call it. What would be the correct terminology? I don't want to say gaslighting or spiritual bypassing, but like, just think positive. It's like the toxic positivity. You have to feel the discomfort and the contrast. You have to feel the wound in order to move through.
Totally. Yeah. Well, especially as leaders, in the work that we do, if we are not looking at a shadow, we create hidden spaces for our followers to hide out in.
Explain that.
So when we're not looking at something or we're not dealing with something like this, like not fitting in, we will attract people who are looking for a place to not fit in. And then they will blame us, and rightfully so, because they literally know that we've got caves in our kind of psyche that they can hang out in because we're not going to call them on it.
So that's probably why I'm not attracted to people who play the victim in their lives. And I don't attract a lot of those women that don't want to be called out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I got shadows. We all got shadows.
We do.
Shadows,
and we can't beat ourselves up.
No.
But we can realize that when we decide we want to go out there and influence, large numbers of people, which I feel like both of us have that wish and that desire, probably from the core of our being in some level that we probably don't even fully understand why, then it is upon us to always be on the lookout for those opportunities to see them and not run away from them.
Yeah, I think it's just being committed to being human, right? And the evolution of growth and knowing there is no arriving, you just constantly evolving.
And it's awesome because then you're like, oh, I see it coming. Like there's that moment of like,
damn it.
Really? Dang. And then you're like, okay, let's go. But that was what happened when I was up all night that night. I was like, what is it? What am I not able to see? Why does this hurt so bad? But I knew, because I've been here so many times, I knew it was just a matter of like playing it over and over again. Why does this hurt so bad? And when it blew, it was like, oh, this is why. And then the cool thing too is that's when we reach our shared humanity, because we can see, oh my gosh, all these other people are dealing with the same thing. I'm not alone. We're all connected.
Exactly. Well, Leisa, this has been an amazing conversation. And I know this book, I don't know why I say book baby, but this book being birthed out into the world is going to make a big impact. So where can people get the book? And also, do you have any accompanying events, probably virtual events, that are happening? What's going on to help people dig deeper?
So the book can be found at mindfulmillionairebook.com, and we're constantly adding meditations and freebies and all kinds of good stuff. So when people go and they buy the book, you can buy it from a local bookseller. It's in Canada, it's in the United States, it's in other countries. The further out you go, more likely Amazon versus maybe a local bookstore in Germany. Although I've heard that that's possible. So it's not been converted into other languages though, but that is a great place to start. And I'm still figuring things out. In the fall, I will be doing an intensive with the work for those who want to go on that journey with me. But we're kind of figuring things out. We're definitely in that, like making things happen, bringing the book into the reality, and then also listening to what folks want more of from us. We're finding, this is a fun one, book clubs are coming up out of the blue. And so I'm going to attend some of these book clubs that people are already doing just to inspire and answer questions. And if somebody's interested in that right now, reach out. But it's a super cool way to digest this information. And probably in a couple months, we'll have like a book club video guide that will help people go through that too.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend, or just like the virtual way to do book clubs. And it's really nice when you can get the author to come in. So that's a great idea for people to get your book, get some people together, discuss it, and reach out to Leisa.
Yes.
Awesome. So besides your website, anywhere else that they can find you, where do you hang out?
So WealthClinic.com is also helpful if you want to take a chakra prosperity quiz. And I'm at Leisa Peterson on Instagram, Lise Lusky on Twitter. And I have the Mindful Millionaire community, which is meant to give folks a safe space to read the book and then share the epiphanies and everything. And that's for free, just to join on Facebook.
Thank you, Leisa, so much. You've always been a huge help to me, and I'm just grateful for your persistence to continue to put this work out into the world, because it's all happens in the messy middle.
Thank you, Heather, so much.